All right. Thank you for joining us today for the program Bible Truth. Our study today will begin at 1 Kings 5, verse 1, and go through chapter 6, verse 38, which is the end of the chapter. Today's lesson is number 8 in our 1 Kings series, and the date is March the 22nd, 2025. Wow. Oh, 2026. I'm sorry. 2026. Yeah, March 22nd, 2026. Boy, the time is it's just flying by. All right, well, King David has passed away in our study now, following 40 years as the monarch of Israel. The majority of his time was spent fighting, defending and running from his own son Absalom, who tried to dethrone him. Now, even at the end of his life, I'm talking about David now, even at the end of David's life, another of his sons, Adonijah, attempted to steal the throne from Solomon. Now, of course, Solomon did become king in David's place, and after doing away with Adonijah and others who were potential troublemakers, Solomon organized the kingdom, appointed officials, and created a plan for ongoing support of his administration. Now, we read in chapter 3 of his choice to receive wisdom in dealing with his subjects when God asked him, "What should I do for you?" But in addition to unsurpassed wisdom, Yahweh, or God, granted him both riches and honor, so that there will not be any among the kings like you in all your days. And just thinking about that, just a kind of an editorial comment. That's the way God does. We ask Him for one thing, and we're intent on one thing. And if it's His will, He gives it to us, and then more. Gives us more. Now the time has come for Solomon to begin the most important task left to him by his father. We've already mentioned it this morning, building the temple. Now you remember that David wanted to do it, but God would not allow a bloody man to build a house for him. However, God did allow David to gather many of the materials that would be needed by Solomon in the construction. And all that brings us to 1 Kings chapter 5, where we're going to begin today. Now, it seems to me the best way for us to look at the next few chapters is just to read it. And as you read your section of the narrative, just feel free to comment. I'm going to limit my comments considerably because the narrative actually speaks for itself. Our goal today is to read through the next two chapters, but as always, we'll go as far as we can until 8:30 and begin at that place next time. Okay? All right, so Mike, if you would start at chapter 5 and just read the entire chapter for us, please. 1 Kings 5.
All right. Reading from the English Standard Version. And I'm hearing a kind of a loud rhythmic clapping sound. I hope you all are not.
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 5. Now Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants to Solomon when he heard that they had anointed him king in place of his father. For Hiram always loved David. And Solomon sent word to Hiram, "You know that David, my father, could not build a house for the name of the Lord his God because of the warfare with which his enemies surrounded him, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side. There is neither adversary nor misfortune. And so I intend to build a house for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord said to David my father. Your son, whom I will set on your throne in your place, shall build the house for my name. Now therefore command that cedars of Lebanon be cut for me, and my servants will join your servants, and I will pay you for your servants such wages as you set. For you know that there is no one among us who knows how to cut timber like the Sidonians." As soon as Hiram heard the words of Solomon, he rejoiced greatly and said, Blessed be the Lord this day, who has given to David a wise son to be over this great people. And Hiram sent to Solomon, saying, I have heard the message that you have sent to me. I am ready to do all you desire in the matter of cedar and cypress timber. My servant shall bring it down to the sea from Lebanon, and I will make it into rafts to go by sea to the place you direct. And I will have them broken up there, and you shall receive it. And you shall meet my wishes by providing food for my household. So Hiram supplied Solomon with all the timber of cedar and cypress that he desired, while Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 cores of wheat as food for his household, and 20,000 cores of beaten oil. Solomon gave this to Hiram year by year, and the Lord gave Solomon wisdom as he promised him. And there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and the two of them made a treaty. King Solomon drafted forced labor out of all Israel, and the draft numbered 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month in shifts. They would be a month in Lebanon, and then 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the draft. Solomon also had 70,000 burden bearers and 80,000 stone cutters in the hill country, besides Solomon's 3,300 chief officers who were over the work, who had charge of the people who carried on the work. At the king's command, they quarried out great costly stones in order to lay the foundation of the house with dressed stones. So Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders and the men of Gebal did the cutting and prepared the timber and the stone to build the house. All right, Hiram and David had been good friends, and Hiram had actually built the royal palace for David. And when Solomon became king, they wanted to carry on the friendship, and Solomon knew that nobody had building skills like Hiram did. And as kind of an aside, I don't know much about the Masons, but I know that Hiram is sort of a foundational character in their story.
Wow, I didn't know
I don't
that.
know how much it is true.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of the story they tell is true because I don't know the story they tell.
Well, I might research that. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Right. So Hiram was a great builder, and there is a parallel chapter in 2 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles 2, 1 through 18 tells this story also, and it gives you a little more information. That Solomon wanted not only to build the temple, but wanted Hiram to help him build a royal palace for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about, by the way, Tyre was an island kingdom off the coast of Lebanon, and it was a rocky area. They grew great cedars on the mountains in Lebanon, but it was very rocky and it was very hard to grow food. So that was quite a trade for Hiram would supply the supervision of the building of the temple and the royal palace. I say supervision. He also, 2 Chronicles 2, that parallel chapter talks about Hiram made a man named Hiram supervisor over all the work. Apparently he could do just about anything. He was a really good metal worker.
Mm-hmm.
And the cedars of Lebanon, the Bible talks about them in a few places, and they are majestic trees that grew on the slopes of the mountains in Lebanon. And the wood was durable, it wouldn't rot, and it could be polished to a high shine. So it was the best wood there was for building.
Mm.
It talks about, Solomon says he's going to provide all these people to bear the burdens and to quarry the stones and had some overseers, but that chapter in Second Chronicles, the verses in Second Chronicles 2 talks about Solomon took kind of a census apparently, and there were 153,000 resident aliens living in Israel. So of that 153,000, 70,000 became burden bearers, 80,000 became stone quarriers, and then there were 3,000 or 3,600 overseers. But if you were a resident alien in Israel at that time, you got put to work. Because I said there was a total of 153,000, and they became laborers and quarriers and overseers.
Interesting.
But, another thing, it talks about in exchange for Hiram's cedars and work supervision, that Solomon would give them food and so many cores of food. So I was trying to find out what a core was, and I found out that a core is the same thing as a homer. So I guess everybody knows what that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But actually, apparently a core and a homer are about 7.5 bushels. So Solomon was supplying 150,000 bushels a year, and I found out that a bath was about 6 gallons. So he gave Hiram around 120,000 gallons of oil. And I don't know what beaten oil is, but it obviously is a finer grade of oil than regular oil. And the trees were transported from Lebanon to Joppa, and Joppa today is called Haifa, and it was located about 35 miles from Jerusalem. So they tied them together. They tied the trees together in rafts, floated them down to Joppa, and then transported them 35 miles overland. No, I think that's about all I have to say about that.
Well, that's a lot, Mike. I made some notes while you were going through. And especially that thing about Hiram being a part of the founding or whatever constitution of the Masons. I'm gonna look that up. That's very interesting to me. I just never heard that before. If I had, I forgot it. And I was also looking in 2 Chronicles 2, just some of those things that you were mentioning in that parallel passage. That's one of the things we found all the way through, that we have another record of some of this too, so we can kind of put it together, similar to the way we do the Gospels. With Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. Tyre. Boy, a lot of history with Tyre, and it was in Phoenicia, which is today's Lebanon, which, if you look at your map, immediately to the north of Israel, also on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. That cedar, in addition to what Mike said, what I read is it's very resistant to rot and worms, and that's another thing that makes it very durable and great for construction. Now, Mike mentioned Joppa, which is Yaffo, Tel Aviv Yaffo today, but what you can remember Joppa for a couple main reasons. Jonah caught a ship to Tarshish in his futile attempt to run from the Lord. You remember when God told him to go to Nineveh? Well, he went down to Joppa and got on a ship going towards Tarshish, which is Spain, to the other end of the Mediterranean. And also, Joppa is the place where Simon Peter saw the vision of animals coming down from heaven in or on a sheet when God told him, well, the lesson was, don't call anyone common. Don't refer to my people as common. And the Sidonians, the Sidonians in the first section there. It's on the same coast, and it was actually north of Tyre. Tyre was north of Sidon was north of Tyre, and then Gebal, which is mentioned there at the end, the Gebal was actually north of Tyre. So they're all right there on that same coast of Phoenicia, which is now Lebanon. Sidon could be familiar, might sound familiar to you, but Jesus visited the regions of Tyre and Sidon in Phoenicia. That was as farthest north he ever went in his earthly ministry. He visited the regions of Tyre and Sidon and cast a demon out of a little girl. That story's in Mark. Okay, so that's it. So we've run into cores before. It seemed like a couple chapters ago. 20,000 cores is 4,600 metric tons. Now, a metric ton, I found out, is 4,800. No, not 4,800. 2,800 pounds rather than 2,000. We think about a ton being 2,000 pounds. Well, a metric ton is 2,800. So there's a great amount of food being passed back and forth. And I noticed the same thing, Mike, you did, beaten oil. I didn't really understand it, and I meant to actually look it up, and I must have got my mind on something else, and I never did. But yeah. So if anybody on the line know what beaten oil is, as opposed to just regular oil? Yeah. All right. So we're all in the same boat. All right. Very good. Anybody else got a comment on chapter 5? It's amazing that to me that they got together like they did with Solomon did with Hiram. Yeah.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
When he was talking about the cedar wood, he was saying it was waterproof, and then you come back and say, it's riding resistant and all.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be possible that same cedar wood is the wood Noah used to make the ark? Because the ark was waterproof. They called it gopher wood.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't find gopher wood nowhere else in the Bible.
Right.
So what was really that gopher wood? Was it that cedar there that he used there? I've been trying to find gopher wood. I've asked people over the years, but nobody can understand where the gopher wood come from. So I'm wondering, is it really that cedar wood? They just called it that because at that time they didn't have a name for a cedar.
Very well, could be. That's a really good point. Yeah, really good point. Because cedar is water resistant and rot resistant, so that would be seem like a good material to make an ark from, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, very true. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna make another note. Something to look up. Cedar and gopher. Yeah. Yeah. Cedar and gopher wood. All right. Question mark. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Good question. All right. Anybody else?
No, true.
Yeah. All these people that they did, and it was kind of neat to me to see what he said in I can't remember which verse, doesn't matter, but where he sent them in shifts. Here it is, verse 14, and he sent them to Lebanon 10,000 a month in shifts. They were in Lebanon a month and 2 months at home. So that's similar to the way firemen work. Like I talked to firemen, some of them say 24 on and 72 off or whatever. So it's not new today.
48 on.
How much, Harry?
24 on and 48 off.
24 on, 48 off. Okay. 2 days. Yeah. Yeah. But that's a lot. He was very organized. Of course, we know that because back in chapter 4, we read about all the deputies that he put in charge of the administrative districts and all that. So he was quite an organizer for sure. Okay. Anything else on chapter 5 before we go ahead? All right. So we're getting ready to build the temple. All right, Jack. Would you start say chapter 6, verse 1, and go through 14, please?
Okay. Reading from the King James Version. And it came to pass in the 480th year, after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of the Lord. Now the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, its length was 60 cubits, its width 20, and its height 30 cubits. The vestibule in front of the sanctuary of the house was 20 cubits long across the width of the house, and the width of the and the width of the vestibule extended 10 cubits from the front of the house. And he made for the house windows with beveled frames. Against the wall of the temple he built chambers all around, against the walls of the temple all around the sanctuary and the inner sanctuary. Thus he made side chambers all around it. The Lord's chamber was 5 cubits wide, the middle was 6 cubits wide, and the third was 7 cubits wide. For he made narrow ledges around the outside of the temple, so that the support beams would not be fastened into the walls of the temple. And the temple, when it was being built, was built with stone finished at the quarry, so that no hammer or chisel or any iron tool was heard in the temple while it was being built. The doorway for the middle story was on the right side of the temple. They went up the stairs to the middle story, and from the middle to the third. So he built the temple and finished it, and he paneled the temple with beams and boards of cedar. And he built side chambers against the entire temple, each 5 cubits high. They were attached to the temple with cedar beams. Then the word of the Lord came to Solomon, saying, concerning this temple which you are building, if you walk in my statutes, execute my judgments, keep all my commandments, and walk in them, then I will perform my word with you, which spoke to your father David. And I will dwell among the children of Israel, and will not forsake my people Israel. So Solomon built the temple and finished it. The majority of this section deals with the building of the temple, which gives scholars a picture of the temple itself and can be understood. There are, however, 3 verses we can discuss. The first is verse 1. Knowing dates helps scholars put things together in order to understand the flow of history. Solomon's reign began approximately 970 BC. If you subtract the 4 years from that, you get 466 BC. I'm sorry, 9066 BC. No, I was right the first time. I'm sorry, 966. Then add 48 years, and you get 445 BC, 1445 BC. as a beginning date of the Exodus out of Egypt. It is helpful to put these figures in writing in order to understand the history of what and when is happening. The second verse we can speak of briefly is verse 7, which speaks of the quarry where the stone came from. All of the hammer and chisel work was done at the quarry, so that when a stone was delivered, it was ready to be placed. This kept down on noise at the temple site and helped to keep it holy. And then the last couple of verses we can talk about is verses 12 and 13, which tells us that it was not the temple itself as the reason God would dwell with the people, but instead it was the keeping of God's statutes, judgments, and commandments that would keep God with the people. We know that Solomon was not as strict as David was, and with time, the kings became worse, so that in 586 BC, the Babylonians tore down Solomon's temple. Amen.
Amen. Wow. Thanks, Jack, so much. Yeah, wow. The first verse, your explanation is just very good on that, because knowing when the Exodus was really helps, as you said. I mean, it really helps date the book of the Judges, Joshua, and the taking over of Canaan, and all that. Kind of falls into a chronology, as you mentioned. So 1445, 1446 BC for the. And it's really confusing to do this because you have to remember to count backwards. In BC you have to count backwards. So to put all that together. And there's a theory about that's called the early date. The early date of the Exodus, 1446, and some ascribe to I think it's 1250, but anyway, it's called the late date for the Exodus, and that's kind of based on archaeological finds and all that. But this, to me, this verse right here just nails it down very solidly, 1446 BC, because we know about the 970. We know that's true that Jack mentioned. Now, let's see, the verse 7 about the quarry and about the stones being cut, and apparently they fit just right. Of course, that would have to have been superintended by God, because I don't know that stones could be cut and then go to the building and fit perfectly without God's supervision on that. There's one thing I ran into here, Jack, and you might have also, that the cubit's mentioned here. We normally think about a cubit, like when we're talking about the construction of the ark, a cubit being 18 inches, a foot and a half. So it's easy to kind of multiply that out. But what I read somewhere, and I can't remember if it was in this study Bible or somewhere else, that Solomon probably used what was called a royal cubit. And a royal cubit's 21 inches long. So that would change the dimensions. Of course, would increase the dimensions everywhere. Very, very interesting. I'd never run into a 21-inch royal cubit before. And the last verses that Jack pointed out to us with that it's not the temple itself. It wasn't the outside. God was interested in obedience. He was interested in the inside of the people, just like He is today. Okay. All right. Anything else before we look at that? Look at the last section for today.
Hey, Russ.
Yes, sir.
Can I go back to what Mike read real fast?
Of course, yeah.
Well, you know, we were talking about the oil. Where the oil, you know, in the King James version, it called it pure oil.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what it is, it's an olive oil that's been made. It's not a regular classic olive oil. It's not a refined olive oil, or it's not the live olive oil. It's a special olive oil. Matter of fact, it's not even the extra virgin oil. The extra virgin oil has been cold pressed and unrefined. It's pure, but it comes from the beginning of the oil. Whereas this oil that Solomon gave to Hiram, it come off the press later. And it is a better oil than any other oil that we can get. So in the King James, it said he gave him pure oil. So in other words, he gave him some of the best oil that they had during that time, and it come from an olive tree.
Wow. Okay. Good. Yeah. Thank you for answering that. Yeah. So so we can kind of relate that to the Mount of Olives, I guess, Harry, because the Mount of Olives obviously covered with olive trees, where they would have come from.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And this was that 100% olive oil.
Wow. 100%.
Derived from the second person feature. Yep.
Interesting. Yeah. So they.
I didn't mean to go back, but when you asked if anybody know, I had to get a few books and see could I find it real fast.
Oh, I'm glad you did. Yeah.
Jack was reading, not that I was ignoring Jack, but I was trying to find that out so we will all be on the same accord when we hang up today.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Now, I'm glad you answered the question. That's a big help. Big help. All right. Chaplain, if you would, take up there at verse 15 and go through 22, please, of chapter 6.
Okay. You know, what I like about this, we talked about the interior of the temple. In terms of, talk about the gold, we talk about being pure, clear. So, 15, the entire inside. From the floor to the ceiling was paneled with wood. He paneled the walls and ceilings with cedar. And he used the panels, planks of crescent for the floor. He paneled off and entered sanctuary, the most holy place, at the fore end of the tabernacle, of the temple. It was 30 feet deep and was paneled with cedar from floor to ceiling. The main room of the temple outside the most holy place was 60 feet long. Cedar paneling completely covered the stone wall throughout the temple, and the paneling was decorated with carving of grout and open flowers. He prepared to enter sanctuary at the fore end of the temple, where the ark of the Lord covenant would be placed. This inner sanctuary was 30 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 30 feet high. He overlaid the inside with solid gold. He also covered the altar made of cedar. Then Solomon overlaid the rest of the temple interior with solid gold, and he made gold chains to protect. The entrance to the most holy place. So he finished overlaying the entire temple with gold, including the altar that belonged to the most holy place. I want to make a comment.
Sure.
about the holy place, where the Ark of the Covenant was. The Ark of the Covenant, it had Aaron's rod, had a bowl of manna, it had the Ten Commandments inside there. But most times they were, I was reading about when they had services, they had an open view. It was inside the temple. And I'm through resting.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you don't have to cut your comment short because we won't try to go to it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, if you got something more to say, go ahead, because this is the last section we'll try to cover today. We'll start at verse 23 next time. So if you got something else, go ahead. Yeah.
But what I like about it, everything was a God, it's pictured as God's testament. It wasn't that testament, it was God. Like Harry said last week, we got to do what God tell us to do.
Yes.
And so that's all I got to say.
Okay.
But the main thing is, I wonder where they have an open view, of the outer temple,
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. But thank you so much. I noticed as you were going through and reading about the 30 feet and so forth, so that would be based on an 18-inch cubit. And that could have been the case, but I read somewhere about that royal cubit being 21 inches. But either way, this is a design. You've probably picked this up already. This is the same design, even though the dimensions are much greater, same design as the tabernacle, that God had Moses and the Israelites build when they were still at Mount Sinai, after they had just come out of Egypt. So the tabernacle is the pattern for the temple that's being built right now. The inner sanctuary, that being the Holy of Holies, the outer sanctuary being the holy place, and then there's the court of the Gentiles around that, and sometimes it's used in different names. In verse 17, the word nave, N-A-V-E, is used here as a synonym for what was called the holy place in the tabernacle. The holy place, not the Holy of Holies. And the question's always been on my mind as to where all this gold, precious jewels, and so forth came from. Well, I believe some of it may have been mined out of the ground. That's the only way you get these precious metals. But the bulk of it, I believe, and I mentioned this before when we were in Exodus, came from the Egyptians. Now, we haven't got time to do it today, but next week we're going to go back or next time, being 2 weeks, go back and look at the Exodus and see where the Israelites got a lot of these things from the Egyptians, because the Egyptians couldn't get rid of them fast enough after the 10th plague, and we'll review that. So we're just going to stop there for today. And pick up at verse 23 in 2 weeks, and I appreciate Joe taking control for next week. Okay. Anybody got any last minute comments you'd like to make before we call it a day?
Yeah, I would. I like the overview that Mike gave about the cedar wood and about how he gave the indefinite of it.
Yes, sir.
In terms of it was very profound. I really enjoyed
the
way Mike brought it out.
Yes, sir. He does a great job. Everybody does. It does this. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today via YouTube. And it's our prayer that this time together was meaningful to you and you learned more about God's Word. God alone can save, and He saves through His Son, Jesus Christ. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. That's recorded in Acts 4:12.